right. So, anyway, our theme for this year is Mystics, Masters, and Paths of Enlightenment. I think this is why people come to a spiritual center, to become more enlightened, don't you think? So, I think it's a great topic. I'm super excited about it. So, we started last week with just some definitions because I think it's always important to make sure we're all on the same page, that we're using the same terms and understanding things the same way. It helps alleviate a lot of misunderstanding and miscommunication. So what do we mean by this word enlightenment? What is that? And I took my definition from Eckhart Tolle, who wrote The Power of Now. How many of you are familiar with that book? It may end up being a book study sometime this year because I think it's just a phenomenal book, The Power of Now. Anyway, he says that what enlightenment is your natural state of felt oneness, right? We know that we are one with the universe, with all that is. We don't always feel it. We don't always feel it. But enlightenment is when you have that feeling and that knowing that I am part of something much, much bigger, much bigger. So in this state of, he says it's simply your natural state of felt oneness with being. In this state of connectedness with something immeasurable and indestructible, something that is almost paradoxically essentially you and yet is much, much greater than you. And then the next part of that is, what is a mystic? What's a mystic? How many of you have heard that word, mystic? So don't let it scare you off. We're not weird, it's nothing unusual. And this definition actually comes from a Catholic priest, from Father Richard Rohr. He says, don't let the word mystic scare you. It simply means one who has moved from mere belief systems or belonging systems to actual inner experience. What that means is we're not waiting for other people to tell us what it is, what their experience is with the divine. It's how do I have my experience? That's what it means, enlightenment, to have your own knowing and experience. There's nothing weird or woo-woo about it. It actually helps live your life. That's what you're here for. And it will help you to live your life better, to be on this path. So that's what enlightenment is and what a mystic is. So I picked those two definitions because they had the word belief system, and as Richard Rohr says, belonging system. Belief systems and belonging systems. So I just shorten that up and call it BS. And I just was so excited when I came up with my talk title that I could actually be standing in a pulpit and talking about BS in its different manifestations. That's just so fun for me. I don't know. It's part of that naughty streak, I guess, that I have somewhere inside of me. So yes, the T-shirt with the bull, no BS. Okay, so your belief system, your BS, your belief system is what determines your possibilities. What do we mean by that? Your belief system is the glasses through which you view the world and anticipate what's likely to unfold. Your behavior is always loyal to your beliefs. So I use that image of the glasses. How many of you have ever put on a pair of glasses that had a tint to it? You know, if it's a pink tint, when you first put it on, everything you're seeing looks suddenly pink. But what happens after you wear those glasses for a while? It looks normal, right? You just adjust. You just know that this is just how it is until you take the glasses off and go, wow, look at how bright it is. Look at how different everything is. So our belief systems are a lot like that. We get indoctrinated as children. We learn. We come into the culture that we're born into with all of the beliefs and ideas of what is acceptable, what's not acceptable, and we just take it all in, and then we live inside of that as if that's the way it always is. Until, again, we take those glasses off, or you meet somebody else that expands your world somehow, and you go, wow, what about that? How interesting. So we all have this. We're all carrying some kind of BS around. And I love this. Lessons from Fleas and Elephants on programming, what we might call programming. What is another word for it? Domestication, the domestication of human beings. So how do we train fleas? Anybody know? We don't? We actually can. Fleas can be trained. So you take a flea, and a flea can jump, I forget, some ridiculous number, like 1,000 times its height. Or something crazy like that. I mean, like outrageous, right? So you put the little flea in this little jar, right? And it jumps, and it will jump out of the jar, obviously, because it can jump like, I don't know, a couple of hundred times its height. But if you put a top on that jar, the little flea will jump up, and it'll hit the top of the jar, and it'll probably hit its little flea head, and it'll hurt. It won't like it. So keep jumping and jumping and jumping, and eventually it's like, wow, I keep hitting my head. I'm not going to go that high anymore, and it will go just beneath the top of the lid, and then you could take the top off, and the flea will only jump so high. Did y'all know that? It gets programmed. It gets domesticated. How about an elephant? How many pounds is an elephant? I don't even know how many tons an elephant is. How do people train elephants? This massive beast, right? You put a rope. It could be done with a rope. It could be done with a chain. Just like that. You see that little rope? Tie it into the ground, and then the elephant can only go so far. You do this when they're young. And then when you take the rope off, they will only go so far because they've been trained. Right? It doesn't matter how strong this beast is. It doesn't know its power because it has been conditioned, it's been programmed, it has been domesticated. What do you think happens to us? Right. Very, very similar, right? Programming, whatever you want to call it. Domestication, this is what happens to human beings. Our belief systems are what determines what is possible for each one of us. I'm sure some of you grew up with some unusual. I'll share some of mine. So you don't have to share yours. I'll just share mine. Some of my belief systems and where they came from. Now, I use that word BS, and so it does have kind of that double meaning to it. But there are belief systems that work, and I don't mean to knock that. Some of you have had great success in your life in different areas. Maybe you had financial success. Maybe you've had success in your relationships. Maybe you love what you do. What you may have experienced great success, and I will say that is probably due in large part to your belief systems, that somehow you lucked out in a family that taught you well. And things work. How many of you have things that are working in your life, right? So all your belief systems, they're still belief systems, but they're not maybe necessarily BS in the other connotation. Does that make sense? So here, there are, again, belief systems that work, and there is this realm of what we call truth. It's what we try to teach here. Some people will say, it's just more BS. It's just another belief system, right? But the thing is, does it work or doesn't it, right? So we look at things and we have ideas of what are true at their very most basic. And then we have our beliefs. So where your beliefs overlap with truth, that's what we might call knowledge, right? Where your beliefs overlap with the things that are true, there is knowledge. Now, notice that there's a whole lot in the realm of truth that we may not ever be aware of. Yes? Would you agree with that? Right? This is part of our life's work, is kind of finding out what is true. And what's that? Expanding. Yes, expanding your knowledge. And then we can have beliefs, right? Obviously, some of which are not true, some of which are. So there's that whole spectrum. What we want to do, what I like to do, is think of bringing those two things closer together so that I'm living more in what works, right? Not just belief for the heck of it, but belief because it goes along with truth. So here's the thing, though. Here's how do you figure it out? How much is it knowledge, or is it just my belief? Because I'm believing things because I think they're true. Right? Is this making sense? Even though it may not be. So when you're a kid, you believe in Santa Claus and you live inside of that world of Santa Claus and you find out it's not true. That could be painful. That could be painful. So anyway, is it knowledge or is it BS in disguise? Is it knowledge or is it just your conditioning, your programming? So here's a way to kind of look at the things that you are living your life by, your belief system, and see, does it really measure up? Is this accurate? So number one, the first thing is, does it hold up to scientific proof? There are what we call ways of knowing. Now, I've talked about this before, but a lot of you are brand new. So this idea of ways of knowing. How do we know the things that we know? Anybody want to take a stab at that? How do you know what you know? You've been taught. You've been taught. But it has to like measure up to certain things. So if I've been taught something, I want to look at it for myself and see, does this measure up to my observation? Has this work in my life? So we call that scientific observation. I can see it, I can feel it, I can taste it, I can have that experience, right? That's one way of knowing. And we can test with tools, do do experiments. That's the scientific method, right? Now we know that our senses are not always accurate. Do y'all know that? Right? Sometimes you see something, it's not exactly what it is. I'll give you a really good example from my home. My husband has zero sense of smell, like none. It comes in really handy for some things. Dirty diapers, garbage, stuff like that. He can handle all of that. He was a police officer, and crime scenes, dead bodies, stuff like that. Grady's walking around like, I don't know, other people are throwing up. He's like, no problem. It's crazy, right? Now I thought, imagine if everybody was more like my husband, and I was me with my incredible sense of smell. That I can walk into the house and say, oh, the dog has did a little something, or the garbage is overflowing, and he looks at me like, how do you know? You just walked in. Well, because I can smell it. So imagine if more people were like him. They look at me like, she must be a witch or something. How does she know that? Right? People have different abilities, and we're all wired a little bit differently. So bottom line, our senses don't tell us 100% of the picture. So the next thing you want to look at is, does it stand up to reason? Does it make sense? Right? You can reason things out. Now, these two ways of knowing, scientific observation and reason or intellect, those are things that other people can say, yes, you're right. I see it, I don't see it, or I can reason this thing out the same way that you do. Makes sense for all of us. That's what we call objective knowing. Now, there's other ways that we can know too. How about intuition? Has anyone ever known something without knowing how they knew it? Especially connections with people, like something is wrong with this person, or this person is calling me, or whatever it is. You don't have any way of knowing how you know, but you know. And nobody else can know the same way. That's your specific kind of knowing, right? Your intuition, what shows up as intuition for you might just totally go over somebody else's head because it's not theirs. Does that make sense? So that's another way that we know. And then the other way that we can know is through this idea of mystical knowing or direct revelation that some people have, where you get that kind of download and you just know that you know, right? That experience of the divine that some people have, and I think a lot of people come to Spiritual Center to have that kind of thing. So those last two, intuition and feeling, are just your knowing. It's just your knowing. You can't ask somebody else, what do you think about that experience I just had? You can't. Right? You can't. But we discount those sometimes because we can't get that buy-in from other people of whether it's true or not. So a couple of these things, you can get corroboration from other people, but some of it is just going to be inside of you. And these are ways that we know. Now, there may be more than that. There may be more, but this is what I was taught, and what I think makes sense for me. Does it make sense for the rest of you? So if you're looking at your life and things are not exactly what you want them to be, maybe you'd like your relationships to be better, maybe you'd like your financial situation to be better, that's a clue that there is some kind of belief system in your life, there's something going on that is creating that result for you. And if you want a different result, you need to change your thought process about it. Maybe it's time to check that belief system and see if it is, in fact, working or is it not. Is that making sense for people? I love this quote. It's attributed to the Buddha, and I'm not sure, you know how that is, right? Whether he actually said it or if he said something like it, but I like the sentiment of it, so I'm going to share it with you. He says, do not believe in anything simply because you've heard it. Don't believe in anything simply because it's been spoken and rumored by many. Don't believe in anything simply because it's found in your or written in your religious books. Don't believe anything merely on the authority of your teachers and elders. don't believe traditions because they've been handed out for many generations. But after observation and analysis, when you find that anything agrees with reason and is conducive, this is key, is conducive to the good and benefit of one and all, then accept it and live up to it. Right? That means even what I'm telling you, even what I'm saying, you have to measure it up against your own understanding, your own knowing, and decide if it is so for you. Is this just some more BS, or is this going to make my life better? I don't tell anybody what to believe, ever. Even as a minister, I don't give advice. If you call me and say, I want to have a session with you, I'm not going to give you advice. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. And I'm going to help you find the guidance that is within you. Because how do I know what you should do? Or what you're supposed to do? Or what's your path? The only one who can know that is you. I'm seeing a lot of wow, are you guys really taking this in? So this thing about our belief system, so now everything's up and questioned. And I'm giving you all of the little kind of warnings, let me say it that way. This is from Adyashanti, talking about enlightenment and this process of being on the spiritual path. And he says this, make no mistake about it. Enlightenment is a destructive process. Has nothing to do with becoming better or being happier. Enlightenment is the crumbling away of untruth. It's seeing through the facade of pretense. It is the complete eradication of everything we imagine to be true. I don't know about you. That sounds a little scary. Sounds a little scary to anybody else? Has anyone ever been through this kind of thing where you had a belief system and suddenly it got ripped out from under you? Maybe you had an idea of what a relationship was or who a particular person was and found out that that was not so. Maybe it's an illness, maybe it's a job loss. This kind of thing happens all the time. We have adjustments and we shift. We find out whether it's because of our choosing or life just kind of bops you a little bit and says that's not working for you anymore. We need to shift direction. And it can be painful. I'm not going to lie. It can be painful. It can bring up all kinds of stuff. I'll give you a real simple one from my life. I've shared with you that I have a lifetime of overweight. I carried excess weight till it maxed out at about 100 pounds over what I should be weighing. And I tried for years, my whole life, on and off with diets and doing this plan and that plan. I was a fat little kid. Anybody remember Light and Lively? That was this milk that was it wasn't even milk, it was blue, it was gross. And I was drinking this stuff when I was a little kid because they kept putting me on diets and nothing was helping. And here I am over 50 already, and I find this new way of eating, this diet that is the exact opposite of everything that I was told. And the pounds started just falling off. And I was happy, but at the same time, I was really pissed off. It was like I spent a lifetime doing everything that I was told to do, eating a whole bunch of little meals, eating all this low-fat stuff, trying to lose weight, and nothing. And now I'm doing what my body always told me, what I always wanted, but I was like, no, I got to do it this way because that's how everybody says you got to lose weight. I was really mad. I felt like I'd been duped. Anybody else feel like you've been duped? So that was very, very aggravating for me. But then what happens is that ego thing, it's real slippery. Because then I'll go down that road of being angry and how unjust it is and how unfair, and people are still peddling all this BS that doesn't work. And you get stuck in the ego again, and there I am spinning in this angry place or this whatever, thinking about time wasted, instead of enjoying the fact that I'm not 100 pounds, but about 90 pounds from where I was, right? So we all have these things. Maybe you're still spinning about the relationship that broke up or the business partnership, and I've had all of those things happen too, and you can stay and you can spin in that. Or you can just shake it off and give thanks that you're free. And now you can move on to the next thing, the next unfolding of your life. Make sense? So I don't want to kid you. I don't want you to think that this is an easy road. It's not. It's not. But it's so worth it. So worth it. This idea of enlightenment and releasing, because it's not about becoming something new. It's really about becoming the truth of who you are and letting go of all of that that no longer serves you. And sometimes we want to just hang on for a little bit more. Right? But the faster that you can release that stuff, the better, the easier it gets for you. And I'll tell you another thing, it gets easier. It gets easier. As you start to look at your belief systems and release them faster, it does get easier. But when you're going through this process, I'll tell you another thing that happens. Sometimes you feel like you're going a little nuts. Can anybody else relate to that? Or the people around you think that you're losing your mind because you're suddenly not doing all of the stuff that you used to do. The stuff that you have done together. Now you're not about that anymore. And you're going to find people falling away from your life. But you're going to find out that you're a whole lot happier. Just saying. Has anyone ever done a remodel project in their house? So you know something is not working. Something's not working, or it needs a new level of order or beauty or whatever it is that you're looking for. And what happens when you're doing that remodeling project? You're pulling your hair out. What's going on? What does your house look like? Demo. It's a mess. It's a wreck. There's dust, there's dirt, there's just stuff everywhere, and it looks like a wreck. But it's part of the process, isn't it? Even just cleaning out your closet. Just cleaning out your closet. You pull all that stuff out, it's a big mess. Well, you just have to know you're working through it. That's all. It's temporary. And then you clear out the mess, and what's next? You rebuild something new. And it's beautiful, and it's at a higher order, and it's better, and you function better, and everything is just better. This is kind of like your internal housekeeping. Enlightenment is like internally like cleaning your closet or demoing your house and starting again. It could be like that. And maybe some of you need that. Maybe some of you maybe that's why you're here. So that's where I was supposed to talk about all that stuff, the pitfalls of shifting paradigms. Because it can feel like that. Has anyone ever had one of those? Literally feeling like the rug got pulled out from under you and falling, and what do I grab onto? Because everything that I thought was real and everything that I thought was true is not. Yeah, it's not fun. But it's doable. It's doable. Everything you want is on the other side of that chasm. But see, there's a ladder. There's a not a ladder. What do you call that? That little bridge, right? There's a bridge, and you know it can be tough to get across it. But there are people. There are people here who've traversed those chasms. Yes, yes, yes. That's why I do this work. That's why I do this work. One of the icons, one of the things that stands out for me in my mind, one of my connections, is Harriet Tubman. Has anybody seen the movie, Harriet? It's another phenomenal movie. But Harriet Tubman was a slave. You know, she'd been a slave. She ran away. She got to freedom. She could have gone and lived her life and been very happy up north. But she knew that there were people back home that were suffering, that there were still people enslaved. There were still people in need of freedom, and she would go back. I don't even remember how many times that woman went back. Countless times, putting herself in danger, going back into the darkness to help bring people out. So that kind of, that resonates for me. That idea resonates for me. And now that I've seen that movie, I don't even know that I can compare at all to that. But I think this is probably true for, I'm going to say all of us, or most of us in this room, that we've been through some stuff. Anybody been through some changes? All of those life dramas and traumas and things like that. And we use those. We use those to the benefit of others. I went through my own stuff. I know that place, I know that place pretty well. Not as well as some of you know some other spots, but I know it. So I can go back and I can pull people out and help them come along and say, hey, I know this road. I've been there before. There are people in this congregation that have been down a lot of these treacherous roads and gone over these chasms and all kinds of things, and I know you all have too. You can't reach a certain age and not have gone through some stuff, right? So we use that. We use that to the benefit of other people. Because it's no fun. I imagine Harriet Tubman getting on the other side and getting to freedom and knowing that all her people were back there. What kind of life would that be? It's kind of like, going on this amazing vacation and wishing, gosh, I wish I had everybody here to see this. It's no fun to go by yourself. So this has become my fun, my joy, is to help people come out of those dark, scary places. Because I know that there's better. I know there's better. Ernest Holmes says this: the universe does not demand suffering. Suffering is man-made through ignorance. It will continue until man learns how to make it a negative in his experience. Someday we shall decide we've had enough suffering. I thought that's an interesting statement. I need some water. So, the universe does not demand suffering. Suffering is man-made through ignorance. We suffer because we don't know any better. We suffer because we get used to certain patterns of behavior, and this is how my family did it. This is how, it's been handed down. This is what I'm supposed to do to belong to this group. Right? But the universe doesn't require that. What he says here, I think this is interesting. It will continue until man learns how to make it a negative in his experience. How many people have seen suffering, equated suffering with something pious, spiritual, like almost inviting suffering because it makes us more godlike? Yeah? Yeah. So until we can release that BS, it's not necessary that we suffer. We can suffer. We can choose to hang on to it. And I'll tell you, when I was spinning in that just angry, that resent, that you can perpetuate that for a long time. But is that what we're supposed to do? What's the point of that? What is the point? But there are some of us who feel like suffering is a thing, is a good thing. So I'll just leave you to ponder that. I'll leave you to ponder that. That it will continue until man learns how to make it a negative in his experience or chooses to not do it any longer. I don't choose to suffer anymore. Okay? Someday we will decide that we've had enough suffering. And I will tell you, in having traversed that chasm over a few different things, it gets a lot easier. It gets a lot easier. Your suffering doesn't last as long. It's not as deep, and it doesn't last as long. You fly through things much quicker. Yes? I'm getting the nods, yeah. People who've been here for a while know this. Yep. Old ways won't open new doors. If you're wanting a new result, you have to stop beating your head up against the wall, doing the same thing over and over again. Too many of us are doing that. As conscious creators, this is also Ernest Holmes, who, by the way, was the person who founded this movement we call religious science, science of mind, centers for spiritual living. I don't usually lead with that because it's a kind of a marketing thing, right? When we talk about science of, what is the other one? Christian Science. There's all these different science things, and people hear those words, and they go, I don't know about you all. So we've had 3 different names as an organization. We're now called Centers for Spiritual Living, but this is the philosophy that we teach, and it was created for another day, another time. But it's a perennial philosophy. It still works. It still works. We teach, again, what is in that bubble that says truth. That's what we endeavor to teach. So, back to this. As conscious creators, we are the forerunners, breaking down barriers of race consciousness, the accumulated effects of misconceptions, and the fears of the universe in which we live. Conscious creators. Conscious creators. That's who we are as conscious creators. Because we're always creating. We're always creating, whether you know it, whether you believe it, whether you realize it. The problem is that most of us are creating from our default mode, from those limitations, like the flea in the jar, or the or the elephant that doesn't know its power because it's got this little tiny rope on its leg. As we free ourselves, we are helping to free the whole human race from the bondage of fear, ignorance, superstition, and thoughts based on what the path has brought forth. The past is dead. Wow, the past is gone. The past is gone. It has no more effect on you unless you allow it to. We live now. Let me give you another quick little example. If, say you had booked the vacation of a lifetime and you knew that you were leaving next week, how would you be feeling this week? You're excited, right? You're super excited. What about if there's stuff going on at work and at home and, but you got this great vacation planned? Yeah, we'll deal with that later, right? We're going to have a good time on this vacation. And so now you've gone on this wonderful vacation, and it's 2 days before it's time to go home. How are you feeling? Nervous, stressed, sad? Okay. So let me ask you this question. Is who you are or how you are right now, how you show up in the world, is that a function of your past? Or is it a function? What is it? It's about your present? It's about your present moment. Okay, so back to the example of you're going on vacation. Most people would say who I am and how I got to be this way is because of my past. How I show up right now is because of my past. Yeah, most people would say that. But if you think about the vacation analogy, you're now looking forward to a vacation and you're anticipating a good time, right? That has you behave in a certain way. You're on this vacation, now you're getting ready to come back home. What are you anticipating? All the crap that you left behind. So is how you are a function of your past? Or what you perceive is going to happen in the future? What you perceive is going to happen in the future. The problem is that so many of us are taking what has been in the past and putting it in the future. That's what it's always been, so we're going to bring it here. Is that accurate?
I don't know, because aren't you supposed to learn from your past?
You can learn from our past, yeah. But do we have to assume that the future is going to be what the past has been?
No, but we can guess, we can project,
Absolutely. We are guessing, we are projecting, we are predicting based on past. What if you could take all of that past and put it in the past? What would be in front of you? The unknown, the unwritten.
But often a realization of our past informs us that we need a new future.
Yes.
Because of being aware of the past, we can begin creating a new way of being.
Correct. But we have to recognize it.
If it's working, we keep it. But when it's not, we learn from it
We should get a mic.
and move on. I couldn't say that again. I said often what we learn from the past is that it isn't working. And by analyzing it, we can begin creating a new way of being. It may contain some of the same elements of the past, but we're taking out the parts that don't work. And we learn, in my lifetime, I've learned a totally new belief system. And it was a big paradigm shift, and that's what a lot of people experience in Science of Mind, or that's what brings them. There are people who come to a New Thought church and they say, wow, I'm finally home.
Yes.
Because they have grown out of their past and they have found a new way of being in the future.
Yes. Yes.
So we can give up the suffering. Hey, could I tell one more story?
I don't know. What time is it?
It's
That's another
we
minister over
were
there.
just out at Fatima. And people go out there, and there's a large courtyard between the museum and a shrine and the church that's there. And people go out and they crawl on their knees across, upright but on knees, all the way across that courtyard as a suffering for their penance and wanting God to hear their prayer. And we even saw some that had families walk along with them, sharing their suffering with them, but encouraging them in it as well.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, I've come so far from that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I feel sorry for them.
Well,
Thanks for the moments.
Yes, absolutely. So the question, and I posed this last week, is not, is your belief system good or bad? Is it right or wrong? It's, is it working? That's the bottom line. And if it's working for you, carry on. Carry on. But if there are areas in your life that are in need of some shoring up, or things that you would like to transform or have be different, investigate those belief systems. What is it that a person would have to believe to have this kind of result in their life? And start asking the questions. Live in the question. Let yourself be uncomfortable for a little while. It's so worth it. It's so worth it. We get to be free. We get to be free. So that leads us to the affirmation. The affirmation. I want you to think about this. I am a conscious creator, no longer bound by fear, ignorance, superstition, or any other false belief that may have limited me in my past. I am free. Now, you may not believe that right now. You may not feel it right now, but this is part of the reprogramming. Remember, the domestication, the programming that happened is deep, it's ingrained, it's been there for a long time. So it might take a little while. So you say these affirmations. We practice meditation, clearing our mind, taking the past out of the future and putting it behind us where it belongs. That's what's part of spiritual practices, is training your mind to be in the here and now, not carrying all this other stuff, the worries from the past, the regrets from the past, or worries about the future. No, we be here and now, so that we can respond to what is here and now, not react to the things that have been in the past. Does that make sense?